Hello, second grade Smarties, and welcome to the read aloud of the book, The Name Jar. Here is the cover of our book, The Name Jar. Now, we are doing something a little different today because yesterday you guys talked about what was happening in the story of Ruby Bridges. We talked about the injustices that Ruby Bridges faced going to a white-only school in 1960. Now, we have been studying and looking at how Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Ruby Bridges responded to injustice. They responded with their words. They did not respond with their fists. They did not respond with anger. They responded with peace. Now, Smarties, because of those responses to injustice, there were changes that happened in our world. The Civil Rights Act was passed, segregation ended, integration was brought into our country. But here's the thing. There are people who still face injustices today. People of color, people with disabilities, people with different cultures and religions, they still face injustices today. Now, I'm going to be reading this book to you because our main character faces an injustice. Smarties, it's so important that we recognize that there are still people who are not being treated fairly and they're not being treated equally. And there's some people that are not respectful of other people's ways of living, other people's cultures, other people's backgrounds, their history. Think about the civil rights movement. African Americans and people of color fought. They fought to get equal rights, to have that Civil Rights Act passed. And that passed, but today people are still not treated equally. So it's important that we figure out what we can do to respond to injustices and how we can help people that experience injustice. Now, we are going to be reading a book called The Name Jar. And our character's name is Unhe. I need you to say that with me. Ready? Unhe. Now, this book is really important because Unhe faces an injustice. And I want you to think about what is the injustice that Unhe faces and how does she respond to it and how do other people respond to it? So let's go ahead and get started with reading our book. The Name Jar by Yang-Soo Choi. Through the school bus window, Unhe looked out the strange buildings and houses on the way to her new school. It was her first day, and she was both nervous and excited. She fingered the little block of wood in her pocket and remembered leaving her grandmother at the airport in Korea. Her grandmother had wiped away Unhe's tears and handed her an ink pad and a small red satin pouch. "Your name is inside," she had said. "My name?" Unhe had wondered. Again, she took out the red pouch to look at the wooden block with her name carved in it. As she ran her fingers along the grooves and ridges of the Korean characters, she pictured her grandmother's smile. We're going to pause for a second. In the Ed puzzle, I want you to tell me, where is Unhe from? Tell me in the Ed puzzle. "Is that thing for show and tell?" a boy asked Unhe, surprising her. Unhe looked up as more kids leaned over. "No, it's mine," Unhe answered, quickly putting the pouch back in her pocket. "Are you new here? What's your name?" a girl asked. "Unhe," said Unhe. "Une?" the girl asked, scrunching up her face. Une? Some kids chanted. No, Unhe corrected. It's spelled Unhei. It's pronounced Unhe. "Oh, it's You, hey, the boy said, like, you, hey. What about, hey, you? Just then, the bus pulled up to the school and the doors opened. Unhe hurried to get off. You, hey, bye-bye, the kids yelled as she left. Unhe felt herself blush. Unhe stood in the doorway of her new and noisy classroom. She was relieved that the kids on the bus had gone to other rooms, but her face still felt red. Are you going in? Asked a curly-haired boy with lots of dots on his face. You're the new girl, right? He asked cheerfully. Unhe nodded, and before she could walk away, the boy took her hand and pulled her through the door. Here's the new girl, he announced so loudly that the teacher, Mrs. Kokotos, almost dropped his glasses. Mr. Kokotos thanked him and greeted Unhe. Please welcome our newest student, he said to the class. She and her family just arrived from Korea last week. Unhe smiled broadly and tried not to show her nervousness. What's your name? Someone shouted. Unhe pictured the kids on the bus. I haven't picked one yet, she told the class, but I'll let you know by next week. As Mr. Kokotos showed her to her desk, she felt many round, curious eyes on her. Why doesn't she have a name? She heard someone whisper. Maybe she robbed a bank in Korea and needs a new identity, a boy replied. I want you to tell me in the ed puzzle, why does Unhe not say her name to her class? Tell me in the ed puzzle. On the bus home, nobody teased her, but Unhe kept thinking about her name. How was school, Unhe? Her mother asked when she walked in. Did you understand the teacher? Unhe simply nodded. She unpacked her school bag and set the red pouch by a photograph of her grandma. I'm glad you are learning English well, her mother said. You must study hard, behave nicely, and get good grades to show that you're a good Korean. I will, replied Unhe. But I think I would like my own American name, she said quickly. Her mother looked at her with surprise. Why? Unhe is a beautiful name. Your grandma and I went to a name master for it. But it's so hard to pronounce, Unhe complained. I don't want to be different from all the American kids. You are different, Unhe, her mother said. That's a good thing. Unhe just wrinkled her nose. Later that day, Unhe and her mother went grocery shopping in their new neighborhood. They passed Fadil's Falafel, Tony's Pizza, and Dot's Deli. A big graffiti-painted garbage truck roared like a lion as it took off down the street. Nothing sounded or looked familiar until they got to Kim's Market. The sign was in both English and Korean. Her mother picked up cabbage to make kimchi, Korean-style spicy pickled cabbage, and other vegetables and meat. She also found some seaweed, Unhe's favorite, for soup. It made Unhe smile. Just because we've moved to America, her mother said, doesn't mean we stop eating Korean food. At the checkout counter, a friendly man smiled at Unhe. Helping your mother with the shopping, he asked. Unhe nodded. I'm Mr. Kim, he said. And what is your name? Unhe, she answered. Ah, what a beautiful name, he said. Doesn't it mean grace? Unhe nodded again. My mother and grandmother went to a name master for it, she told him. A graceful name for a graceful girl, Mr. Kim said, as he put their groceries into bags. Welcome to the neighborhood, Unhe. That evening, Unhe stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Hi, my name is Amanda, she said cheerfully, then wrinkled her nose. Hi, my name is Laura. Maybe not. Her smile turned down. Nothing sounded right. Nothing felt right. I don't think American kids will like me, she worried as she began to brush her teeth. Hi, my name is Susie. Shuji, she said to the mirror with her mouth full of toothpaste. She was saying the name Susie. Why do you think none of these names are feeling right to Unhe? Why do you think these aren't feeling right to her? Tell me in the puzzle. The next morning, when Unhe arrived at school, she found a glass jar on her desk with some pieces of paper in it. Unhe took one out and read it aloud. Daisy. That's my baby sister's nickname, but she said you can use it if you want, said Cindy, who sat next to her. Unhe took out the rest of the paper. Tamala, she read. I got it from a storybook, said Nate. She was smart and brave. Unhe nodded and unfolded another piece. Wednesday? Yeah, you came here on a Wednesday, Ralph, said Ralph. Thank you for your help. A smile spread over Unhe's face. Ralph quickly said, We'll put more names in. You can pick whatever you like, or pick them all, and you'll have the longest name in history. At 3 o'clock, the bell rang for the end of the school day. Unhe looked out the window and saw it was sprinkling. It's the same rain, she thought, but in a different place. She watched other kids leaving in groups. Hey! A familiar voice called out to her. Unhe turned around to see the curly-haired boy again. I'm Joey, he said. And you? Don't you have any name? Unhe thought for a moment. Well, I can show you, she said, and took out the small red pouch. She pressed the wooden block on the ink pad and then stamped it on a piece of paper. This is my name stamp, she said. My grandma gave it to me. In Korean, I can use it as a signature when I open a bank account or write a letter. And whenever I miss my grandma, I use it to fill a piece of paper. Want to try it? She offered the stamp to Joey, and he carefully inked the stamp and pressed it hard on the paper. The red characters gleamed against the whiteness. Wow, that's beautiful, Joey said. Can I keep the paper? Sure, Unhe said. And then the two of them shared her umbrella as they walked to the school bus. Every day, the jar got fuller with more names, and Unhe read them all. She found a few names she liked, Miranda, Stella, Avery. They sounded interesting. I hope you choose the name I put in, Marco told her at snack time. I've put in 3 more, said Ralph, Madison, Park, and Lex. They're my favorite street names. Maybe you should close your eyes and draw a name, Rosie suggested. Ralph frowned. That's silly. What if she doesn't like the name she draws? Well, we didn't get to choose our names when we were born, did we? Rosie argued. Everyone thought about this. When Unhe got home from school that day, her little brother ran to give her a letter. It was from her grandma. She opened it quickly. It said, To my Unhe, I hope you are enjoying your new school and new friends. Be sure to help your mother and your little brother. Here the moon is up, but there the sun is up. No matter how far apart we are and no matter how different America is from Korea, you'll always be my Unhe. Your grandma forever. Unhe took out her wooden stamp and filled a paper with it. She thought for a long time in front of the bathroom mirror. On Saturday, Unhe walked to Mr. Kim's store. Mr. Kim was helping a customer, but he looked up and greeted her. Hi, Unhe! Hello, Mr. Kim, Unhe replied. She felt as if she was back in her old neighborhood in Korea. Hey, said the customer, turning around. It was Joey. Your name is Unhe? He asked, with his eyes open wide. Unhe looked quickly at Mr. Kim, then turned to Joey. She nodded slowly. Yes, it's pronounced Unhe, and it means grace, Mr. Kim added. Unhe, Joey said slowly, and this time perfectly. It made Unhe smile. I'll have it ready for you tomorrow, said Mr. Kim to Joey. Thank you, Mr. Kim. See you Monday, Unhe, Joey said to her. He left before she could ask him why he was at the store. On Monday, Unhe came to class early to look at the names one last time, but the jar wasn't on her desk. Instead, there was just a single piece of paper with a name on it. Unhe slipped it in her pocket. Where's your name jar? Ralph asked as soon as he saw it was gone. I don't know, Unhe said. It wasn't on Mr. Kokoto's desk or on any other desk, and it wasn't on the counters or any of the shelves. As other kids arrived, they helped look. Soon, Mr. Kokotos came in and Ralph shouted at him, The name jar is gone! The jar with all the names in it! Gone? Mr. Kokotos replied. With a look of concern, he asked Unhe, Did you get a chance to read all the names? Unhe nodded. She took a breath. I'm ready to introduce myself, she said. Unhe wrote her name in both English and Korean on the chalkboard. I like the beautiful names and funny names you thought of for me, she told the class, but I realized that I liked my name best, so I chose it again. Korean names mean something. Unhe means grace. Grace, grace. Inhe, shouted Ralph. Everyone tried to say it. Yinhe, Unyi, Unhe. Unhe said her name again slowly and clearly. Soon the kids began to say it better, even Mr. Kokotos. They applauded Unhe's choice. I was named after a flower, Rosie whispered to Unhe. Lots of American names have meanings too, Mr. Kokotos reminded everyone. When the class was dismissed, Unhe heard her new friend say goodbye. Bye, Unhe. See you tomorrow. Goodbye, Unhe. Unhe said goodbye and then looked around for Joey, but he was already gone. Unhe, come downstairs, Mother called up to Unhe. Your friend is here. Unhe rushed down to see who she met. There stood Joey, and in his arms was the name jar. Where did you find it? Asked Unhe breathlessly. Joey looked embarrassed. Well, I took it, but only because I wanted you to keep your own name. And you did. He reached in and pulled out the names. Do you want to keep them? He asked. Thank you. I'll keep them as a souvenir, Unhe said happily. Then she pulled out the piece of paper from her pocket. Do you want this back? Joey grinned. You can keep it. I'll return the name jar to class. Maybe you could put some Korean nicknames in it for us. Names with good meaning. I could do that, agreed Unhe. I've already got a Korean nickname, Joey said. Mr. Kim helped me choose it. Carefully, he pulled a small silver felt pouch from his pocket. Then he took out a dark wooden stamp with beautiful Korean characters carved sharply into it. He pressed it on the ink pad and then on the piece of paper next to him. Shinku, read Unhe. That means friend. And Shinku smiled back. All right, Smarties. So that was the book, The Name Jar. I want you to think. Unhe wasn't segregated from her class, right? She came from the country Korea, and she moved to America. Now, it's not really in your face about what injustice she faced. But what were the kids on the bus doing her first day that she was going to school in America? What were the kids doing? Tell me in the puzzle. Kids were making fun of her name. They weren't saying it correctly, and they weren't trying to say it correctly. Smarties, there are friends that come from different countries that have special names, just like how Unhe talked about her mom and her grandma went to a name master to get her name. That is very important. That's something that is important to their culture. So Smarties, when we meet someone that we have a hard time saying their name, it's okay if we can't say it right the first time, but we should never, ever make fun of their name because that is an injustice. That's something that is not fair to that person. Think about it. Would you want your name made fun of? No, your name is special to you. Your parents gave you that name. In other cultures, names are important, and names are a sign of where a person has come from, who their family is, and where their family is from. So Smarties, when we meet people that come from different countries, from different cultures that look different than us, it's okay to be curious, But remember to always be respectful. Always be respectful of another person's culture, of another person's way of life, and especially their name. And always remember to be kind. That is how you can respond to injustice best of all. Be kind to everyone. And don't be scared to be curious. Don't be scared to ask questions and to try to learn people's names and learn people's ways of life. That's part of learning. That's part of being a smarty and having a growth mindset. All right, Smarties, that is it for this very special lesson. I hope you enjoyed learning about Unhe and her Korean culture. All right, Smarties, happy Friday.